For me, connection is a way leading us to different possibilities. From the mobile phones we use every day, to the games that our kids are playing, to the TV that we watch, to the data centers, which support AI technology. When we look at all the connected world, all the devices we are using, they actually face very similar challenges. The heat inside of these devices builds up, and that long run, it impacts its performance. We can feel it. The device become hot, speed slow down. What I see is Dow plays a crucial role in the devices we use in our daily life. Our solution is thermal management and cooling technology. It dissipates heat much quicker than traditional cooling solutions. Dow's solution reduces the energy needed when it's operating. It also cuts CO2 emission and minimizes the water usage compared with conventional cooling systems. I'm originally from Shanghai, China, so I particularly cherish the time that I can connect with my parents, my close friends. They are still in Shanghai. My daughter also, she really misses her grandparents. We use quite a lot our mobile phone, our tablet, have a video call. I feel lucky. We don't feel the distance. We feel always connected here. We are redefining the boundary of what's possible. It's about innovation.
Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. I hope your day is going well. For some of you on the East Coast, that hopefully the day will end on a positive note. I wanted to thank you for joining this webinar. It is part of our monthly webinar series. My name is Clarence Lowe. I am the Director of Professional Programs here at SASE. As some have mentioned, this is my second tour at SASE on Squad. I was previously with SASE between 2019 and 2022 as the Director of Organizational Relationships. I wanted to thank Dow again for their generous sponsorship of our webinar series. I also want to share that Dr. Litam is currently tied up with a patient who is having a very urgent need for her guidance and care. So we asked, she knows she's coming. She's just going to be a few minutes late. Obviously that's very important, and we honor and respect that she's spending this time providing care with one of her patients. I wanted to take the opportunity to introduce myself a little bit further. As you know, we went through some leadership changes recently. I'm on board reconnecting with our interim CEO, Gigi Albert, and the rest of our squad to move our team forward during some headwinds, certainly as all of us are experiencing some external pressures. And so it's a real pleasure to reconnect. I recognize some of the some familiar names in this room already. So I look forward to reconnecting with some of you, introducing myself to many of you others I have not had the opportunity of saying hello to yet. One announcement that I wanted to share while we have a few minutes before Dr. Litam comes on is that SASE Professional, in response to some of the inquiries that we have received from our ERG community, is piloting a experienced professional virtual career fair. This will be targeted for June 6th for 6 hours. I believe it's 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern time. We have some member companies already very interested in joining us to exhibit and be a sponsor of this virtual career fair. It will be on the vFairs platform. And as you can imagine, there's, I think, a healthy dose of opportunity and appetite to take a look at potential candidates during this time. For you interested who may be interested in attending or exploring this event, the registration fee that we are going to be putting up on our website and across our social media marketing channels is $20, where you can upload resume and search for opportunities and so forth. So be on the lookout for that across our marketing channels. And if you are directly or very interested, please, I will be on this session. Jessica Moy, who is working with me on Squad, will also be monitoring chat and some of the IT in the background. But do let us know if you would like to receive more information about that. Again, June 6th from 11 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time, $20. And like I said, there'll be plenty of opportunities there, I think, with our exhibitor to make some connections. All right, Jessica, do you see it? Dr. Litam, you are here. Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you for joining us. I hope everything's all right. I just shared one update on behalf of SASE, to our group here. And it is my pleasure, folks, to introduce Dr. Stacey Litam to you for this webinar entitled Understanding Intergenerational Cultural Scripts to Promote Mental Health. I wanted to, you have the bio in obviously her write-up in the introduction to the webinar, so I won't spend too much time, but she, is an associate professor at Cleveland State University, licensed and professional clinical counselor, which she is practicing at the moment, probably. And so thank you for joining us, Dr. Litam. I will turn it over to you. Like I said, Jessica and I will monitor. And if any questions, if there's a good break point, we will go forward. I think Jessica has already made you a co-host so that you can also screen share. And we will be on standby over here. So I will hand it to you now.
Wonderful. Thank you, Clarence and Jessica, for inviting me to share space with our SASE community. Hi, folks. I'm so glad and I'm so honored that you're choosing to spend a whole hour with me on this Tuesday. I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, this cloudy Tuesday afternoon, and I'm thrilled to engage in a bit of a workshop and discussion around intergenerational trauma and the ways we can promote health by understanding how generational trauma is transmitted and then what to do next. Oh, wait, let me make sure that I'm also optimizing sound. One moment, please. Okay. So folks often ask me about the inspiration for my book. My book is called Patterns That Remain, A Guide to Healing for Asian Children of Immigrants. And when I talk about this book, I think it's really important to share that it wasn't just one moment that inspired me to write about the impact of generational trauma on the mental health of our Asian American diaspora. It was really 1,000 tiny moments my mother would become so angry that she would scream and then withdraw. How she's never apologized with words, but she's expressed apology by the way that she carefully spoons adobo and rice onto my plate. How she's never overtly said, "I'm sorry for what I said to you," but I feel her apology in the way that she carefully rolls turon for dessert because she knows it's my favorite. This book was inspired by the fact that my father has said, "I love you" to me 3 times, but I've lost track of the amount of times he's asked, "What do you need from Costco?" How every Sunday night after family dinner, he carefully peels my oranges, and each time he hands me a segment, it feels like a love letter. This book is born out of 1,000 tiny moments just like that, where our parents have been communicating love letters to us. They've been communicating and singing love songs to us for our entire life. We just don't know how to listen to the music. We just don't know what we're even looking for. There's no surprise as to why everything, what's the movie? Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, resonated so powerfully with our community. The protagonist travels every possible multiverse to find a reality where she feels accepted by her mother. And there's something about that plot that I think so many of us feel so deeply in our bones. Just like many of us, I grew up with a very common origin story. I was born in the Philippines in 19 and the first 2 years of my life looked very different. I remember the feeling of my flat feet running along the marble floors of our home and the way that my yaya Shirley would chase me around the house trying to get me to eat spoonfuls of arroz caldo, adobo, and sinigang. I remember not being able to run outside barefoot, but the feeling of the sun-warmed earth on my skin was what I loved the most. My days were filled with adventure, but my nights were filled with stories about a stranger. Every night before bed, my mom would cradle me into her arms and pick up the only photograph in my nursery. And though the man in the photo had the same eyes and a similar nose, I've never seen this man before. My mom would take my finger, place it on his picture, and say, "Stacey, this is your papa. He's in America working hard to start a life for our family, and when the time is right, we will go meet him." I'm a 2-year-old baby with no sense of time. I don't understand how my father is working thousands of miles away, working 80 plus hours a week, trying to make ends meet so he can establish a future for our family. How he has to make this impossible decision between buying food or buying a phone card because he only has enough money to pay rent and not even call my mom. I have no sense of urgency from my mom's struggle, how she has to work on her own and raise my kuya and I alone in the Philippines without my dad, and how she's also forced to fill an album with Polaroids with messages to bridge an entire ocean. Papa, I love you. Papa, I'm crawling. Peekaboo. I can't see myself in the mirror. All I know is that I'm a baby with no sense of time, and that the man that my mother calls my father is not here. Because my young mind is trying to make sense of the world around me, I end up internalizing a very specific set of cultural scripts. For me, those scripts were things like, I am not worthy, I am not needed, and I am not wanted. When I talk about intergenerational trauma, when I talk about cultural scripts, we have to go back to the origin story to understand where we are now, and then also what to do next. Those same cultural scripts that I had inherited around the workplace and around relationships, thinking I have to work twice as hard to get half as far, I shouldn't rock the boat, I should be obedient, and I shouldn't cause trouble. I thought that those were cultural scripts that I had taught myself, but in reality, those were cultural scripts grounded in generational trauma that I had inherited. The next voice you're going to hear is the voice of my Lola, or grandmother. A couple fun facts about my Lola. She loves to eat the mangoes that grow in the front yard of her home in Batangas in the Philippines. She loves the way her feet feel as she walks along the white sand beaches in the beaches of Boracay. And my Lola was born in 1932, which means my Lola survived the Japanese occupation of the Philippines in World War II. Approximately 8 hours after bombing Pearl Harbor, the Japanese army moved their advances to invade the Philippines. The first thing they did when they invaded Batangas was they annexed my ancestral home. The army lived on the first floor of our house, and my family was relegated to the second floor. I once asked my Lola about her experiences surviving the Japanese occupation, and she told me the story. So, with her permission, I recorded it, and I'm sharing it with you all today. I do want to note that there are references to war crimes, death, and dying in these audio clips, so I invite you to please notice what you notice and take care of yourself as you hear some of these depictions.
When the Japanese were already killing people, we transferred to a partner place. When we were in that place, they were already killing men. My father heard the Japanese speaking loud. My father and I went farther away from our house, from our hut.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Japanese came again. We went to a park place. And then when the Japanese came, they were asking my mother where my father.
Oop. Hang on. Did we lose the... Can everyone hear the recording?
Yeah.
Audio is fine.
Was. And my mother told them that we went somewhere and had not returned. So the Japanese left already. Then the Japanese burned the hut we stayed earlier, and it took say 1 week because we have so many things there, coffee and rice. The hut was burning for a few days.
My Lola describes the ways in which surviving the Japanese occupation impacted how she navigates the world, the relationships she carries, and then also how she raised her family growing up. Here's more of what she remembers.
But when the Japanese started we migrated to our farm far away from town in the hinterland. We were staying there, but we have caretakers who stayed in our the first house that we occupied. And when the Japanese came, they were all killed by the Japanese. So we were not affected because we stayed in a faraway place. Well, the husband was wounded, but the wife and I think the daughters were killed by the Japanese. There were many people killed by the Japanese in our place. I cannot remember them anymore. I was only 9 years old that time.
The faraway place my Lola is referring to is Taal Volcano Island. It's around 18 miles on foot, which is the distance they walked to find survival and safety.
We hit the Taal Island, Taal Volcano Island. Before that, the Japanese stayed in our house.
I once asked my Lola, how did you manage to survive? How did you manage to stay in your home for a couple weeks before deciding to find safety? And she said, I survived by keeping my head down, being obedient, and not causing trouble. The next voice you're going to hear is the voice of my cousin, DJ. DJ is the oldest male on my mother's side. He's become kind of the historian of our family. DJ is describing what happened to our Lolo Cecilio, who was my Lolo's older brother, or Kuya, on April 9th, 1941. On this particular day, after months of intense battle and no hope for reinforcements, the Filipino and American soldiers stationed on the peninsula of Bataan were forced to surrender. What happened next continues to be one of the largest atrocities considered across many a war crime in World War II. It's called the Bataan Death March. The American and Filipino soldiers were forced to line up into 4 columns and march miles and miles and miles without rest, food, or sleep, and while surviving gratuitous violence.
During when the Japanese came, when the Philippine government asked them for volunteers for the war, Lolo and his brother Cecilio went forward to volunteer to fight. Lolo's brothers were too young, so the government sent Lolo back to take care of the young brothers and sister. That's why only Lolo Cecilio went to war. Lolo Cecilio survived until the end of the war. the thing is, have you heard of the Death March? Yes, but on Death March, we have a neighbor here in the village, which is friends of your mom, actually. Their parent, Mr. Dairit, went to war with Lolo Cecilio. And the last he saw Lolo Cecilio was in the beginning of the Death March. And then it got separated. Lolo Cecilio died in the Death March.
My family describes Lolo Cecilio as a kind and compassionate man. The fact that he was able to survive the entirety of the Bataan Death March and died somewhere in between the Death March proper and the liberation of the war camp is a testament to his ability to, likely, keep his head down, not rock the boat, be obedient, and not make waves. So what's interesting for me is I thought I had come up with those cultural scripts of generational trauma all by myself. But what I actually learned was that these cultural scripts I inherited. Here's a picture of my Lolo's family years after the war. My Lolo is a very handsome one in the back row on the furthest to the right. So let's pivot a little bit and talk about intergenerational trauma. By the end of the war, an estimated 527,000 Filipinos had been killed. Between 131,000 and 164,000 Filipinos were killed across 72 distinct war crime events. So as a young adult, I'm receiving very specific messages from both sides of my family. These internalized messages include, follow the rules, don't be too loud or make waves, don't speak up or cause trouble, don't question authority or challenge the status quo. Now, if all of you had your cameras on and if we were sitting in a large room together in person, if I would have asked you all to raise your hand if any of these sounded familiar, my best bet is a lot of hands. So generational trauma is unique because generational trauma is situated in our stories. It's not just what we say out loud, but also what we don't say that is passed down across generations. If you ask child-focused professionals, parents, folks who are around children, they'll tell you that children have a really incredible superpower. Children can learn to make meaning out of anything. So here's what tends to happen with children. Children notice when their parents and ancestors don't talk about their family stories, and they interpret that silence as shame. They think, people don't talk about our family story, and so I must feel shame about that. We don't talk about what happened in our family, and so I must feel bad about that. There's this really interesting phenomenon in the research called the conspiracy of silence, where parents think, I'm not going to talk about our trauma with our children because I don't want to burden them. But the children internalize that silence as shame. This conspiracy of silence, this inability and discomfort with sitting with and sharing our stories across generation tends to be what transmits generational trauma messages and behaviors across each then generation of people. So the way that our ancestors and parents experience and also don't talk about their generational trauma impacts us. It impacts us in our relationships, in workplace settings, in our friendships, and as parents. Parenting styles and behaviors, they impact the way that we love or receive love or lack thereof in our partners. They influence the way we see the world. They influence beliefs about ourselves, others, and the world. They're also likely inherited through epigenetics. There's something about trauma that's actually baked into our DNA. Because it impacts our attachment style, generational trauma also impacts us in the workplace. It impacts our ability to be successful, creative, and motivated, especially after receiving challenging feedback. So when trauma occurs, our DNA does something really incredible. On one hand, it activates genes that promote survival, which prime us for stressful events. In this way, we end up being more resilient when stress happens, but the downside is that we end up maintaining unhelpful patterns, unhelpful behavioral patterns around not asking for help, unhelpful mental health patterns, believing that we have to just be resilient, keep our head down, and get through stress instead of seeking perhaps professional counseling services, engaging in other kinds of restorative care practices, and even reaching out when we're feeling overwhelmed. The fact of the matter is, our genetic code is not designed to keep us happy, it's designed to keep us safe. So we find ourselves engaging in the same practices over and over because they're grounded in survival until they no longer work for us. This is where self-awareness and raising critical consciousness really comes to the forefront of the work. So here is the generational trauma pattern that I mapped out in my family of origin. Under the Japanese occupation, Filipinos were silenced and adapted through obedience. My parents emphasized survival, assimilation, and obedience when I was a child. And so I internalized those limiting cultural scripts, and specifically the ones that focus on survival and assimilation. Don't act in ways that draw too much attention. Work twice as hard to get half as far. Don't be too loud or be a troublemaker. Don't question authority figures or rock the boat. Do whatever it takes to survive. Follow the rules. This is a good one because we're in SASE. Be successful. Become a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. You did it. Yeah. And so I did those things. I followed in my parents' footsteps. I did all the things. I became a hashtag not a real doctor. And I did the best I could to keep my head down, be obedient, and be successful. I got my PhD in just under 3 years, where I centered research around racial discrimination, around multiracial solidarity, and moral injury in the workplace for physicians. I was mostly well-behaved until March of 2021, when I saw a headline on the news that said, Filipino woman brutally attacked in Times Square while onlookers watched. At the time of March 2021, my own mother was 63. I remember thinking, this could have been her. This could have been my mother. As a academic, mental health professional, researcher, I remember looking to the research to say, what are we doing about this? How do we support our community with race-based trauma? I was shocked to find that in May of 2021, no one had done a thing. And so I rolled up my sleeves and we got to work. From 2020 to 2022, I published over 30 peer-reviewed publications on topics related to Asian American mental health following discrimination from a disaggregated lens, moral injury in workplace settings, post-traumatic growth among Asian American communities, and a variety of other topics to empower and amplify our standing as Asian Americans. What people noticed was what people didn't know was that behind the scenes, I was getting about 4 to 5 death threats every week. People, including members of our community, were telling me to stop publishing research about our pain. People from our community were telling me that I needed to stop doing the work. And what they didn't know was that my parents had raised a professional troublemaker. So here we are today. We have learned the importance of untangling these cultural scripts. And for many of us, myself included, we only begin to unlearn and untangle generational trauma when we have this point of awareness. For me, it was in 2021 when I realized no one is doing the work. How do I unravel my generational trauma scripts around being silent, being obedient, and not rocking the boat? And I remember this distinct moment of realizing that the woman who was attacked could have been my mother. And that was the moment that I realized the importance of unlearning cultural scripts. For many of you, maybe you've already begun having these conversations. For many of you, maybe it's a topic that we're just sitting with and marinating in. Regardless of where you are in your journey of awareness, I am thrilled to be by your side as we continue this process together. Yes, Kenya, we're here to make good trouble. So here's a photo of my dad and my kuya, which means older brother in Tagalog. I'm the bald one. I have much better hair now, thankfully. So what do we do? How do we begin unlearning and untangling these limiting cultural scripts? Well, we can begin by becoming balanced people. And you get to do this for your inner child. Here I am. We're doing a Winnie the Pooh, shirt, no pants. And the thing about becoming balanced people is it requires us to begin differentiating our value as people with our tangible productivity. Now, I know that's hard to hear because we're Asian scientists and engineers, but you are already worthy of love and compassion and kindness independently of how you show up in the productivity in the workplace. You don't have to earn rest. You deserve rest just by being a person, just by being you. So these messages we often carry around, working twice as hard to get half as far, these messages we carry that result in an imbalance as people, messages around asking for help being a sign of weakness, messages around taking every opportunity to succeed, because if you don't, someone else will get ahead and you'll fall behind. Again, if we were in a room in person and I asked, how many of you have felt that inkling to take on that role, take on that opportunity, do that service, because if you don't, someone else will get ahead and you'll fail? That scarcity mindset is baked into us as Asian Americans. As Asian Americans, we live in the hyphen. We're always Asian first before ever being considered American. And so because of this conditional identity and social positioning, we're often forced to continue qualifying our worthiness, often in the workplace, because we have to feel, or we're forced made to feel as though until we're able to establish our value, we're not good enough as Americans. But I assure you, you're already good enough. So I invite you to begin sitting back and giving yourself space before saying yes to that new role, saying yes to that new opportunity or service condition. I invite you to consider, before saying yes to the opportunity, ask yourself this: if I say yes to this, am I saying no to myself? So remember that your internal value is not measured by our productivity. We do not have to prove our value. You already are inherently worthy of value. And the more we're able to find joy in other things aside from work, the more we will find peace and the better our mental health. As Asian Americans, many of us also weren't conditioned to develop the mental health literacy and language to have conversations around feelings, to have conversations around stress, and to have conversations around asking for help. And so we think, I've just got to get my head down and get through this. We think if I ask for help, it's a sign of weakness. When in reality, we are worthy of slowing down because the world will never stop. And so we must give ourselves permission to slow down and take a break and find joy. What's interesting is that work is often the way that many Asian Americans in our diaspora find value instead of finding value in relationships. And it's because work is easy. Not in the sense that the work we do is easy, but work and the expectations around work is very clear cut. We are expected to do a specific set of skills. We know when the deadline is due. We know what the task entails. We know what the objective looks like, and we know when the task is complete. Those tasks, as Asian scientists and engineers, often require very little emotional processing. We're doing and not feeling, because for many of us, feeling is uncomfortable. Emotions are new and unfamiliar and scary. Relationships require a lot of that. Relationships require a lot of the emotional vulnerability, the sitting with feelings and communicating wants, needs, and desires in a very different way than work. So relationships can be really stressful and activating. They can activate our nervous system, and we feel that cortisol spike of, ooh, this feels unfamiliar and intimidating. Work doesn't really do that in the same way because work is predictable, but relationships are not. And so we tend to find value and over-identify with work as the predominant source of our value and not relationships. So giving yourself permission to reinvest and sit with those emotions as you strengthen your relationships is another helpful way to begin becoming balanced people. Let's talk a little bit about bridging generational gaps and healing our inner child. Remember always that you are deserving of love. Stacey, I'm glad you're nodding your head. Our parents are also deserving of compassion. So many of us carry these deep resentments combined with love and admiration and gratitude for our parents' sacrifice. And we think, gosh, my parents sacrificed so much. They came to this country to give us a better life. They worked hard to give me opportunity. They paid for my school so I could go to the major that I wanted. I must not let them down. I must make sure that I'm doing everything I can to make them proud. And often we do this at the expense of our own mental health and well-being. Yes, our parents are deserving of compassion, but we are also deserving of compassion to ourselves. It's our parents' first time being parents. We forget that. It's our first time working through this healing journey and healing our inner child. And we have to remember that our parents are deserving of compassion just as much as we are deserving of compassion and healing. As much as we wish our parents would just accept us for who we are, our parents want the same thing. So many of our parents, especially those who are immigrants, have focused on survival. They came to this country, had to keep their head down to keep food on the table, a roof over our heads, and clothes on our backs. And so because we're in survival mode, many of our parents just did not have the opportunity to sit with their emotions and process how to hold us psychologically. We talked about these conspiracies of silence and how that tends to transmit generational patterns of pain across generations. We also have to begin untangling these meta messages. It's not what our parents are saying, but what they're saying in between the lines. For instance, when our parents say things like, become a doctor, lawyer, engineer, we think, if I'm a doctor, lawyer, engineer, that's the best way my parents will be happy. But what they're often saying is, these are the professions that I believe will keep you happy, healthy, safe, and successful. So this is the career that I want for you. I wrote this short prompt around inner child work because I think it's a really powerful way to begin this healing. I had coffee with my younger self today. She was 15 minutes late and I was right on time. She avoided eye contact while sharing how the girls at school bullied her. I watched her chin tremble as she recalled boys who teased me, love you a long time. With a flick of her wrist, she wiped a tear from the corner of her eye and she described how isolated and lonely she felt. She expressed resentment toward her mother. She says she never feels good enough and wishes she and her father would spend more time together. I tuck the hair behind her ear and assure her it won't always be that way. Before we parted ways, I hugged her tightly until her body softened. I told her she would build a community so strong it would heal all the parts that felt broken. I told her one day she would write a book that would capture her experiences and create the foundation for others to heal. I told her the book would resonate across generations and her heart would feel so full it could burst. I think I'll have coffee again with her soon. And when I do, I'll let her know that I spent a lifetime becoming the person that she would have run to when she needed to feel safe, seen, loved, and protected. So if this resonates with you, if something about this moment is eliciting emotions that you feel right here in your throat, I invite you to find time today, perhaps in the evening, once you've settled from your routine, to reflect on what it is your inner child needs to hear in this moment. Take a moment to write that down and hold space for your inner child. So I want to be mindful of time. I'm just going to breeze over the next couple concepts that are in my book. The first of which is overcoming scarcity mindsets. Now, if you come to my house for dinner, you'll know you're not going to find butter in this country crock tub. Instead, what you're going to find are leftovers. Because just like my parents and ancestors, I've internalized some very specific scarcity mindsets around resource hoarding. Asians are very creative. We like to keep everything because you never know when you might need it. Now, I see you, Clarence. You're like, oh no, this is me. Now, on one hand, great, creative resource, wonderful opportunity. You save money, you can have a variety of different Tupperwares, but also this ends up bleeding into the workplace when we think we have to take every opportunity, otherwise then another one won't come up. This is your reminder that there will always be another opportunity. It might not be the same one, but there will be another opportunity. So give yourself permission to question, if I say yes to this, will I say no to myself? I wish I had more time to talk about healing in relationships, but I will tell you that all of this is in my book. It's called Patterns That Remain. And what I'll say is that as Asian Americans, many of us exist in insecure attachment styles. We are not very good at accepting love and kindness without immediately trying to reciprocate. As Asian Americans, we have learned that love is transaction. As Asian Americans, we have learned, likely through our parents, that to be in a loving relationship, parent, child, or partner, is to exist in reciprocity. And that's because our parents said things like, I came to this country for you, the least you can do is get straight A's. I sacrificed so much for you and your siblings. The least you can do is become a doctor, lawyer, engineer. How many of your hearts are racing right now? Clarence, I see you. You're like, oh no, that's okay. Here we are. We're in this together. And the fact of the matter is that this is why when you come home from work and your partner is washing the dishes, we think, oh, I got to clean something. We don't allow ourselves the time and the space to accept love and kindness because that kind of love has not been role model to us. So many of you have heard of the 5 love languages, and they're great in theory, but they're not evidence-based. And they're specifically for white European individualistic communities. That's not us. So I did the research. This book was actually a grounded theory, and the book is around what is it that we as Asian children of immigrants need to heal and move towards secure attachments. So here's what I'm going to share with you. This is the blueprint that we need to move from insecure attachments to secure attachments in relationships. So the home model. What we need as Asian Americans is this: to be deeply seen, known, and understood, and wholeheartedly accepted by our partners without condition. We need to know that we can show up as our messy, fragmented selves and still be loved. As Asian Americans, so many of us grow up fragmented. We are children on the playground and someone says, you're too loud. And we think, okay, I'm going to be less loud. We're so excited to eat lunch for the first time in school because our parents packed our favorite. And the kids at school say, your lunchbox is stinky. And we think, okay, I'm not going to pack that food anymore. We grew up into adolescence. People say, you are too bossy, you're too assertive, you're too queer. And we think, okay, I'm going to make myself even smaller to fit your expectation of how I'm supposed to be. So healing, not just generational trauma, but healing into wholeness requires us to take up space, requires us to exist in our wholeness. One way you can do that is through this home model, by letting your partners love you back into wholeness. And it doesn't just have to be a partner. Your friends, your close community members can do this too. So our partners need to understand us and know what we need to feel connected, appreciated, and seen. They need to know what it is that we are looking for to feel connected. They anticipate our needs. I'll never forget the moment my own partner and I were at a party, and there was this moment where I was overhearing a conversation where a friend asked, oh, are you and Stacey watching The Last of Us, which is about like fast moving zombies? Like, give me a slow moving zombie any day. I can outrun them. But if you throw a World War Z Last of Us zombie in front of me, like dead, she's dead. She wears heels, she's dead. My partner responded to our friend, we do watch The Last of Us, but never before bed because Stacey gets nightmares. I remember thinking, okay, like something about this is very healing. He anticipates my needs and sees me for who I am without judgment in a way that makes me feel whole. It's another kind of data point here that this is something that resonates. Our partners are intentional. They demonstrate care each day. And it's not just the big moments where they show up, it's the little moments. It's the moments where they notice you're tired and say, what can I do to support you? It's the moments when they say, I know you've got a big day. I've already got coffee made for you. These are the little tiny moments of care that happen almost in silence, that communicate love and understanding. And this is the big one. Our partners are not transactional. They extend the freedom for us to simply be. So I invite you to stop even working to even the playing field the moment your partner or loved one or friend does something kind. Let them extend kindness, because what a gift it is to be loved by you, you divine being. What a gift it is to extend care and love for you and have you receive that. To reciprocate immediately upon recipient of love is to invalidate their ability to care for us. So give yourself permission to receive love and kindness and watch what happens next. When these things happen, over time, we experience a greater sense of freedom and healing. Okay, here we go. Lots of questions. I tried to frame out 45 minutes for the workshop. This is normally a full 90 minutes, so I think we did pretty good. I'm open to conversations and whatever is coming up for folks. And everyone is probably so glad their camera is off, because this is typically when the tears are coming. And I'm so glad you're sitting with this content. I'm so proud of each of you.
Dr. Litam, thank you so much. What an amazing resonance. Many of us in the room have onions in the room. Many of us are laughing, and I'm sure many of us are feeling pain. Some of the historical things that I apologize, your grandmother touched on. And within the Asian diaspora, there are so many commonalities with respect to our histories, our backgrounds, our heritage, and how we honor our older adults, our nanas, our papas, right? And so thank you for that. There are a number of questions in here that we've been tagging throughout, and so in no particular order, just as they were coming in. Do you feel that the ancestors, parents, elders experience is commonly experienced among millennials born and raised in the US? In parentheses, I'm a 90s kid. So I'll let you respond to that.
Sorry, I'm just finding I'm like a very visual person. I like to read the thing and then reflect on it.
Sure, sure.
So I want to make sure I'm understanding the question. If the question, Sundeep, is to what extent are millennials more likely to notice and experience the generational trauma and the desire to bridge generational gaps? What I'm noticing is that millennials and generations further, right, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, we have more mental health literacy and capacity to sit with these conversations. And this is the first time people are having these discussions around generational trauma and mental health. Many of our parents, because they were so close to survival mode, they were so close to focusing on assimilation, that they just didn't have the capacity or even the interest or desire to begin sitting with these kinds of conversations. And so I think we're starting to see more of these topics. And also we're seeing more destigmatization around mental health focused conversations than we have even a decade ago. And I think as an elder millennial myself, I would like to take credit for our generation's propensity to sit with these emotions and center these conversations because it's giving permission to other folks to continue this work. If that did not answer your question, please feel free to send a follow-up.
Great. Thank you. There is one question in our Q&A section. And that is, I'll read it out as you look for it. Did healing require distortion? And at what cost? For example, did you find yourself distorting, softening, or rearranging certain truths to make the story survivable? What emotion or ethical cost did that carry?
Interesting. Okay. So when you say distorting, I'm curious about whether you are referring to what we call a cognitive reframe, which is relabeling an experience in a more strength-based way. So for instance, it could be called a distortion to say that a parent who was an immigrant didn't extend love, like my parent didn't love me because maybe one of our parents or both were working hard when we were younger, weren't there for us in the emotional, psychological ways that we wanted them to be, but we're missing the physical ways in which our parents were expressing love, which was by providing a life for us with more opportunity. That same reality could be told from my parents didn't love me to my parents did the best they could. My parents sacrificed immensely to ensure that I was okay. So if by distorting, we mean cognitively reframing and learning to retell our stories differently from a strength-based perspective, I think that that's part of healing. I think that's an important part of extending compassion to our ancestors and our parents by understanding from a different perspective how both realities could exist. The question around ethical cost, I'm not sure. I can't think of an ethical cost of extending compassion to parents for doing the best they could. And I did find that in my own process of healing, which is an ongoing process, I have softened in my relationship to my parents. I've extended much more compassion to my mother, especially in the ways that she responds. So for instance, like so many Asian mothers, when I have gone to her with problems and I wanted her to just sit with me, she tells me what to do. And I now know that comes from a place of love. That's not her attempt to invalidate my emotions. So that's another kind of cognitive reframe, is understanding that that's the best way she knows to love me, is to extend advice. And what I'm looking for is different, and that's okay.
Terrific. I don't know if you can see it, Dr. Litam, but how do you stop the pendulum from swinging too far when you are changing cultural scripts?
So without context, I would say, one of my favorite phrases is everything in moderation, including moderation. And so what swinging too far will look like for one person is going to look very different for another person. I would say that if you are noticing that in the process of changing your cultural script, you are feeling less grounded, less centered, less happy, and less whole, I might encourage you to reevaluate and reflect on to what extent you can find a bit more balance in this pendulum swing.
Thank you. Here's a really interesting one from Bo. What are some tips to find culturally appropriate therapists for Asian Americans?
So good. Okay. Yay! There's so many Asian American mental health directories. A couple of my favorites, there's South Asians for Healing. There is the Asian Mental Health Project. There's Asian American, what is it? Asian Mental Health Project, Asian American Health Collective. And all of those websites are completely free. And you got access to different Asian American therapists and the directory based on location, insurance provider. There's also, if you're Filipino, Therapinay, so it's THERPN*Y, and that's all Filipino providers all across the country. And so try those resources, and you can sort of begin connecting with an Asian American therapist. And also, you don't necessarily need an Asian American therapist to do the healing work. There's just not enough of us out there. What tends to be more important is that you find a practitioner that you feel connected and safe with. And that tends to be what promotes healing. Thanks, Bo. Yay, I'm so proud of you.
Couple more questions if there's time.
Yes, and I can
wanted
stay
to
a little
respect.
later too.
Okay. And before, Jessica does have a poll, or sorry, a survey that we would like for you to spend a little bit of time in. So really thank you for your input and feedback and for your questions. The next one is from Alex. What does healing intergenerational trauma look like on the other side? And how do we cultivate it in order for it not to come back?
I wish I could tell you that generational trauma and the journey to heal that is unidirectional, but I don't think it is. I think that as we continue this process and continue this healing journey, it becomes this lifelong process of noticing, this lifelong process of healing one element and then noticing another thing coming up. Then we focus on that and we heal that process. Something else comes up and something else happens, and then we circle back to another thing we thought we had healed. And so it ends up being a process of self-awareness, raising a critical consciousness, and then noticing what can we do next. On the other side, I think we just have more tools to feel more happy, healthy, connected, and well in our relationships, within our family of origin, and then also in the workplace.
I'm just kind of skimming through here. One more question is, how do we control ourselves not to be too Asian to our kids, as I am finding to be the typical Asian mom when my mom was Caucasian. She grew up in Asia and an Asian father.
I would invite you to reflect on what being too Asian means to you. And I would ask you this: if you are too Asian, what are you afraid is going to happen? If you take up space, what are you afraid is going to happen? If your kids find joy and connection and pride in their Asian identity, what are you afraid is going to happen? Many of us as parents think that if my kids are too Asian, then they're going to get bullied. And we think that by protecting them, by focusing on assimilation, we're going to prevent that. But unfortunately, that's out of our control. Because we're different, we're probably always going to face discrimination. But what I'll tell you is, I've published nearly 50 peer-reviewed articles on discrimination, and the biggest protective factor for discrimination among disaggregated Asian Americans is a strong ethnic identity. So the more we feel pride in who we are, the more protected we are psychologically. So I would say, take up space. Go ahead, teach your kids to be proud, because that is going to build resilience and grit as they get older. And then we'll teach them we don't have to be fragmented. We can just be.
Asian. Kathy, thank you for your papa comment. I honor my papa and and gong. But how do you get help for someone who works too hard based on all the things you had listed prior, taking all the work opportunities because they're worried about not doing enough?
I'm trying to find this question.
Yeah.
I see the Asian one. Can you read that one more time, please?
Yeah,
Did I just see that my age? Thomas, what? Sorry, I got a direct message.
I'll put it also back here just in the general chat at the very bottom here. How do you get help for someone who works too hard?
This is presumably a partner or a loved one. So similarly, many of our unhelpful behaviors, just as humans, they stem from fear. They stem from the part of the brain that says, I'm not good enough. I'm only worthy when, I'm only successful if, and we want to know what's that second part of the statement. So if it's a partner or loved one that we're noticing is working so hard, favorite question, what are you afraid is going to happen if you slow down? What are you afraid you might miss out on if you don't work 60 hours a week? And find out what that fear is, and then work with them to find a strategy that they can commit to that feels realistic.
Hey, oh my God, just a wonderful discussion. You could be here for a little longer than an hour that we had. And again, Dr. Litam, just so many points that you had shared one question. Is there an audiobook version of this?
So that's so funny. We're actively working toward that. This is my audiobook voice. We are in between a couple different distribution partners, and we'll see. Well, the
Okay.
goal is yes. I just don't know who it's going to be. And there's also, this is the crazy part. There's also no guarantee that I get to read my own book, which is wild because it's like first person perspective. So I'm confident it'll all work out. And when I do, I will be sure to use this version of my voice for all of you. Listen to me.
Wonderful. Are there any, please take the feedback survey so that we can get some data points. Really appreciate everybody who spent the hour with us on this webinar. Dr. Litam, thank you so much for your remarks, your history, your passion for the work that you do here and helping us better understand some of these scripts that we have all internalized at some degree or another, and maybe pay it well and move it forward a little bit, right? So thank you again. I wanted to close by just saying, please be on the lookout for more webinars from SASE Professional. We have 2 more already on deck for May, Asian Heritage Month. So please go to our saseconnect.org website under the professional drop-down, and you'll see those webinars that are teed up. Again, these are free to you, and we're always available to reach out or to connect should you have any questions regarding our professional programs. And again, we'll just kind of close out the session here. It is recorded, and probably in a couple of days, that link will go back onto this webinar section for Dr. Litam's presentation. So you can come back and look, as there was a lot to unpack in this conversation. So thank you again, Dr. Litam.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Follow me on Instagram, Dr. Stacey A. Litam. Buy the book, Patterns That Remain. I'm also on book tour. I'll be in Chicago next week, in New York this Friday. Please come through. They're all free events because they're community events and we love to see community. And stay in touch. I may not be your Asian mother, but I am an Asian mother, and I am so proud of you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Bye now.